Hey guys, Casal here. You're about to watch Thorin talk and talk and talk. But it's kind of good, I swear.
Right, I'm here for another episode of Talk to Thorin, and my guest for this one is JT, who is the in-game leader of Complexity, and before that, he was obviously in Cloud9, as we will talk about in this episode. Funny thing is, I actually did think I'd already done this interview, because believe it or not, my life's like that. I've done so many interviews that even I can't keep track of which ones are, but it turns out, actually, what he did was, I'll link it, he appeared on, I think, an episode of Counterpoints or something like that, and then we talked about some things about his career, and so I'm just misremembering that I do know some of the history. So the good thing is, we can actually come in fairly clean on this one. So JT, the most obvious first place to start is the immediate thing people know about you before maybe your recent results is that you are obviously South African. That was obviously quite unusual in Counter-Strike. In fact, I would say the interesting thing is I know for things like the most famous tournament obviously was the World Cyber Games, was in a place that people from countries like South Africa, Australia, basically the places that weren't at all the big tournaments. That was the one place back in 1.6 we used to see people play there or see, like, is there any talent? And I have to say, whereas like you would maybe get like the odd Australian team would be like all right or could do an upset, I don't think I've ever heard of a South African team in 1.6 that ever did anything. Like maybe they might have had like, I don't know, like a BO1 win, like I say, in a World Cyber Games or an ESWC or something. Certainly no one ever made any sort of a deep run. So actually my question for you would be this. Most people, even in games like CSGO or modern esports, have like a background where like when they were a kid, they were playing that esport, they just weren't pro. Like were you actually a guy were you playing like 1.6 when you were a teenager? Were you playing it as like your first game? Were you a source player? What was the deal?
No, it's actually a little weird. I didn't play any 1.6 or Source or anything like that. CSGO was my first Counter-Strike, but before I started playing Counter-Strike, I was playing in Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4 teams in South Africa.
Okay.
And yeah, we were like, the teams I was in was basically like second or best at Battlefield, and then there wasn't really a scene in that. Like, I mean, there's not really a Battlefield scene at all. So I was like, well, I like gaming. I want to go pro in something. Let me just move to Counter-Strike. So after my last event in Battlefield, when I was like 14 or 13 or something like that, I just deleted Battlefield and downloaded Counter-Strike. And then like within like 6 or 7 months, I was competing at like local LANs. And
it's like a 15-year-old kid. Well. You're going to LAN as a 15-year-old.
Yeah, I went to my first LAN for Battlefield when I was 12 years old.
Fucking
and I
hell,
came like top 6 in that, and then so other ones doing, I was like 13, 14, like a few top.
So did you actually have like the rep? You were like a whiz kid, like some 12-year-old kid, like playing like that. By the way, that sounds like a fucking movie version where you lose and then you go over like, who did I lose to? And there's like a little kid sat there like, hello, like you were just like some kid tearing everyone up.
Yeah, that was exactly it. If you actually, I mean, you could probably search Facebook for it, but there's a bunch of photos of me playing it like BYOCs and bringing my PC there. My dad was there with me, like to
look after you,
chaperone me and just make sure nothing happens to me. So it was fun. I kind of missed the BYOCs where everyone like sits behind you and sees, oh, this guy actually legit. Like,
it's kind of hype though, isn't it? Like you know, the funny thing about that is, even though people think like it'd be intimidating, if you're actually a good player, it's kind of hype that people like watch it. Holy shit, people care that I'm good. It's kind of like exciting, right?
Yeah, I mean, I played even better at those tournaments. Like I was really good online, but when I played at those tournaments, just like having people watching you and just like, it's just really good for the ego just to see all these people around there. I'm like, yeah, look, I'm not cheating. Because like I think like back in the day, if you were good at the game and you were young and no one knew who you were, like everyone just thought you were cheating. Because everything was like pretty much like gatekeep from like 1.6 players and source players and stuff like that. It was just always, even in the South African scene, it was like that. So yeah, it was fun.
This is actually something I want to ask, is because I noticed that when you came along into the Counter-Strike scene, though, if people don't know, Bravado Gamer was around for years, and for most of the players you eventually played with were on that team, but you aren't. You're on the other team. So what was it like coming into the scene? Like, were they the top dogs? Were you trying to work your way up? Who were you in CSGO when you first began?
I mean, I was basically nobody. I came over with some friends, and we were doing pretty well, and we basically didn't get invited to like any of the South African LANs when I first started, even though we were doing like really well online. Like pretty much didn't get invited to anything besides the ones you could qualify for back in South Africa. So I think like there was basically just 2 teams back then. You probably won't know them besides Bravado. It was just Bravado, Energy, and Damage Control. And they were all like pretty old guys, old players. Some of them actually had played in like ESWC and
right.
1.6 tournaments like that overseas, like I don't know what they were called, cyber sports and stuff like that. And so yeah, it was like just trying to catch up to them and do well enough to show that I'm actually like better than them, like just as a kid. So Bravado Bravado was always like the number one team that everyone wanted to join back then, and that was like a no-brainer move when they asked me to join.
Right, when you came to this team, you're still quite young. You're like, what, 17 or something? Like, it's not too pro. Were you already the in-game leader when you joined the team?
No, I was an in-game leader in Carvin, which was the team I was on before Bravado. But when I joined Bravado, they already had Detchery and Elusive that were previously IGL, so they were like kind of throwing the IGL role around, and I was just like letting them do it. But like after a while, it ended up being like the system where I was like the creative guy, so I was like creating all the strategies and everything that we were adding to the strat book and stuff like that, but I wasn't the one calling it. So and then TC actually, like after one of our international tournaments, I think it was WSG, like 3 or 4 months into our, like when we first moved to NA, we played like the China event, whatever. And then like he basically just asked me to like try an IGL because he knew I was doing it before, and like since then I was just like the IGL since then.
Was it a big deal when you came to Bravado that the team was the best? You won all the tournaments in South Africa, you were the champions. Was it a big deal to take over the scene, as it were?
Yeah, I mean it was pretty good. Even back then, that was probably like the prime of South African CS. Like I actually won quite a lot of prize
money. Some of the prize money is kind of impressive for the year, yeah.
Yeah. For South African events, it was really, really good. So I wish it was still like that. I'm sure we would have more teams back home if it was still like that. But I think like after we left and some other like political issues and stuff like that, it just ended up kind of not being the same anymore. But yeah, it was very impressive back then. So for me as like a school kid back when I was playing, yeah, it was pretty good money and I was pretty happy.
Right, I feel like a lot of people think they understand the Bravado story because they think it's just a replay of the Renegade story. It's like people come from a different region. Obviously, the secret hack that you guys have is you all speak English. Yeah, make all the jokes about the accents, everyone. But obviously, the joke is that you can just go to NA. And not only, first of all, is it not that hard from these countries to get the visa probably, but secondly, you can have NA players. You can be in NA orgs, right? Was there actually a vision when you got this offer to come to North America of like, it'll only be South Africans and we'll stay South African? Was it ever even the idea of like, if we go, then eventually probably we will bring in like Americans and stuff? What was the actual idea of going there?
Oh, yeah. So when I first joined, they were actually ready to move. They were ready to move to the US. So they actually had to wait a whole year for me to finish high school because that was my last year of high school.
Right. So
like the plan from the start was to move all of us to the US to see if we can qualify for big events, to see how well we can do. There was never like back then it was kind of like we were a family. Like we were going to go through it all, just make sure like this is the team. We're going to do as much as we can, get as good as we can together. And it was like I never even thought about like roster changes for at least like the first 6-7 months of the team, because it was just like kind of like a passion project for us. They were all just there learning together. We weren't making any money besides prize money. We were like staying in the house together, sharing rooms, that kind of thing. So it was, if you want to compare it to anything really, it's more like similar to like what the Brazilians did when they were just like pretty much have like no money and just like we have to
slumming
win.
It a bit,
Yeah, we have to win, otherwise we're gonna go home. Like, and we were pretty close to like going home for a few times, and we were able to like push through, but eventually. Obviously, it didn't work out with Bravado, but I'm sure you'll ask me about that later.
Right, one thing I did want to ask was, I was actually also shocked when I looked up on the Wikipedia, like the TC guy was there the whole time. This guy's just like actually a mega veteran because, you know, like coaching itself, even in this era, wasn't that like big a thing in Europe and North America. Like it's still kind of like you had just someone who had the role. Like he's been with you a long time now. Who's this guy then?
Yeah, actually, if you follow like the whole timeline properly, it's actually been TC and I's team the whole time. Like every single time we've moved the organization, it's been like an actual like team move. So like we moved from Bravado to ATK to Cloud9 to Extra Soul to Complexity. It was like a team move every time. So it was like me and him just being together this whole time. He was there in Bravado when I initially got picked up. I think he got there like 6 months before me, and if I'm not mistaken, it was his idea to like pick me up and one of my teammates back then. So since then, like we've just been working together, getting better together, and he's just like a really hard worker, and we've never had any issues. So there hasn't been like any talks amongst ourselves to like find a different coach. I'm sure when I was playing bad. I'm sure like GMs and stuff have asked about replacing me, and maybe they have looked into stuff like that. I'm sure they have. Like that, I've had obviously bad moments, but for me, I mean, like I haven't had another coach, but I feel like any other coaches wouldn't do as good as a job as he
Have you
has.
had some kind of special connection with him that you've stayed together for so long?
I mean, we're obviously friends. We're family. Like it's not really family, but we're family from like the Bravado days, and it just feels like we know how each other work, and just especially like when we're like away from home and stuff like for so long, it's just it's easy to work with him in my opinion. Just like he's a really happy guy. He's very charismatic, so we've never had like any players have an issue with him. Like I actually can't name one player that's like mentioned like making a change or anything like that, or like mentioned that he was doing something wrong. I feel like he's just been working hard since we got him, and he deserves the job. So it's not like something that we're not just friends and that's always on the team, or like that's why I'm on the team. Like we've both just been working hard since the beginning.
One thing I noticed that you went through is it's funny that you guys moved all the way to North America, hoping like, right, we can sort of like get better practice and level up our pro game. Because what you walked into was actually the exact same nightmare that actually the lesser North American teams have, which is you're in the scene and you're in those like invite level leagues. But the problem is to actually reach a LAN is really fucking hard because you have to play like a billion of those online qualifiers till you get through. And you know how those qualifiers are, where it's just like you play a million matches in a row, especially when you're the unseeded teams at the beginning and you're not big enough yet. So, like, I've seen there's plenty of people who've been in the tier 1.5, tier 2 NA scene who've had the same problem, mate, where you can play almost a whole year from like a team house playing, and you play top teams, but you never qualify for the LAN. You're always coming like 7th, 8th in the qualifier, or you miss it by one spot, or they win map 3 or something. And the problem I've heard with that is, first of all, to a fan of like top level CS, you're just invisible because they don't see you at the LANs. But they don't know as a result, you're not just sat at home, you're actually grinding like a motherfucker. It's just all online play. I've heard it's actually kind of like, can be a mental challenge to go through that. What was it like for you? It was almost like a year it took you guys to reach like a proper LAN when you were in NA.
Yeah, I was obviously like it was just a grind. I think we actually did well though really quickly, but the games we were winning were not like the games to qualify. Like we won we won main firstly, and then we won our first MDL season, but it was just a practice season, so it meant nothing. We just got like a bunch of money, and it was just like, well, I wish we won the next season.
Yeah, people don't know that. It was back when they did alternating seasons, right? One would just be a normal season, then the next one was the one with like the promotion aspect, and this was the one in between, I'm guessing then, right?
Yeah, it was just the one in between, so we didn't get anything from that besides some money. We kept getting to like every close qualifier, and then we would just like pretty much lose after like a few games, and we would never get to the LAN because NA pretty much just had like 1 or 2 spots each time.
Yep.
And there was a lot of teams back then. It was actually like a really good time for NA.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a long stretch that we didn't really get anything. We had our South African qualifiers still. Like we went back home and played WSG and make sure we went to that. I think we did eventually like make some other LAN. I don't really remember. And then we also played, I think at the end of the year, we eventually qualified for DreamHack Winter, which we did pretty well at.
Yes.
So like, it did take us really long to like actually qualify for anything meaningful. Like we pretty much were like maybe if I had to like put us in a ranking, like we were like top 8 in NA, like pretty quickly, but that doesn't really get you anywhere. So it was like,
sure.
We need to just keep grinding and like the gap, I think the skill gap between like the top 3 NA teams back then and the rest of them were just like so big that it was really hard to like kind of break through.
Did you actually, like, I mean, you're still quite young and inexperienced in your career. Were you okay grinding in this time period? Is it not like a bit like, I mean, I could imagine this could burn people out if you keep having time and time again, you feel like you're banging your head against a brick wall, you don't get the results. I mean, if I always say, I think, well, the thing a fan can't understand is because they don't know the everyday battle. They just they can almost look with the bigger picture and be like, it's only been a few months. It's like, mate, 3 months of like grinding and not getting a meaningful result can feel like a waste of time, right? You might feel like, what am I doing? Like, are we just never going to succeed? Are we going to have to go back to South Africa? Did you ever have any doubts?
I mean, yeah, a lot of doubts. I wouldn't say that we got burnt out, but there was a lot of frustration and like worries, especially for the older guys that were maybe they stopped studying or they quit their jobs and stuff like that to like move to the US and try and get breakthrough, and it's taking us like 5, 6, 7 months to actually qualify for anything. They're not really sure if like it's ever going to work out. And then, like you said, like we're playing like every single open qualifier, we're playing every league that we can, so we're just playing like tens and tens of games every week, and We're like this close every time, but it's like we don't know if we're gonna either break through now or we're just gonna like start losing. So yeah, it was worrying back then. I wouldn't say that I got burnt out just because I was young and like I was just really excited to play and like move to the US and finally get like an opportunity. So I think like if teams have to do that now, not the moving part, but if like teams are like at home and just like grinding for that amount of time, it definitely becomes a burnout. Even for us, like going to all these events that we do now, like we still get burnt out just from like playing so many matches and practice and stuff like that. So I think when you look at like the European scene right now, like when you look at a player and they've played like 120 maps in three
Sure.
months,
Yes.
like imagine playing more than like almost 2 maps a day.
Yes.
Like you're playing of just matches. So when do you practice? Like when do these teams practice? When do they have a day off? Like they have to review their matches that they're playing. Like I think like it's just like the grind is crazy now. It was crazy back then too, and it's just I think that's like the beauty of CS is just like the open circuit. There's so much to play for that you can always like. There's any team can break through. Like it's gonna be a grind for teams that just started playing.
When you went to this DreamHack Winter at the end of 2018, this actually, in hindsight, looks even better now. Like, contextually, these teams look even better. Like, for example, in the group stage, you managed to beat the Optic team, which, if people don't know, was like Snappy and Config and like bunch of players you all know. And then you beat the G2 team, which was that Shox and Kenny S one, which was sort of the last legs of the French lineup at the end with Jax and that. Then in the semi-finals, the Existence Galaxy team was the one with Plopsky and fucking Nork, who obviously went on to NIP like right after that. And then in the final, the Ents team that you played, well, this is the end of 2018, guys. That was the one that the next major was in the final of the major. Like, this is actually a banger run. Like, you made it all the way to the final of this tournament. It's only Ents that you lost to. Like, here's the thing. If you had the grind before in the online period, which might be frustrating, this must be kind of cool because like you've got a chance to show like, hey, we're actually good. Like this can't be a fluke to win this many games. Like, this must be very satisfying.
Yeah, I think we were actually getting really good on Bravado. Like after that whole like 12-month period of us like grinding in NA, like we were actually starting to get really good. And I think like if we somehow managed to continue like with Bravado and all that, like we probably would have started doing really well, like making majors and putting like the South African scene on the map. But it was just, I mean, for things that out of our control, it didn't really like happen that way. But it's like nice to look back and look at the teams that we were playing back then and the teams that we beat at that event, especially for it being like our first like real event outside of like WSG and ESWC before I joined. It was, I mean, yeah, it was really good, and I was. I mean, it's still like a really big memory for me. I mean, I've only really played. I haven't played that many playoffs at LAN events even now. Still, like only now suddenly like started getting back into it, and like I still think about that all the time.
Right, as you say, obviously it wasn't a great scenario. Like you aren't still a Bravado to this day. Spoiler. So what happened? Like, is it really as cynical as like you didn't make it through the minors? So like teams dropped. Like what happened with this? Like, because as far as I remember, people even remember it. So wasn't this one of the ones where you guys had to do a bunch of messages like, how do we stay in the US? What the fuck? Like, do we have to go home? Sort of, right?
Yeah. So I think it's been long enough that I can like speak about it and like tell everyone exactly what happened. I think we went through to the minor. Like we already qualified for the minor. We had just come from DreamHack Winter. We just done well and all that, and then we get to the minor and the Bravado just drops the news that they can't like afford to continue doing the project. And like, I mean, if there's no money, there's no money, right? Like,
Sure.
Alienware, I don't know the exact sponsor details and all that, but they weren't. It didn't look like we were going to be able to continue. They were racking up a lot of debt at the time, and just wasn't going to work. So the team obviously wanted to stay together. Like this was like the best we had ever done. Like we still just felt like this is what we wanted to do. We wanted to be the South African team. We wanted to stay together and play. So we started like brainstorming, like what are we going to do? And we fell upon the idea of like trying to get donations for us to stay in the US for the next three months while we look for sponsorships or anything like that. In hindsight, we probably shouldn't have done it, honestly. Ended up being like a little bit of a shit fest, to be honest, because the team kind of just ended up dying, and we had to like get all the money, try and give all the money back and stuff like that. Fallen actually did a lot of streams for us and like a lot of tweets and all that for us to like actually help us out, because I think he probably like just thought of it like the way that Flusher.
Oh, he was paying it forward or whatever. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, he's like paying it forward, and he was helping us out. Cool. So like, it was really awesome that Fallen made all these streams and tweeted and stuff like that, because I think majority of our donations probably came from what he was doing for us.
Oh, all right, that's cool.
And I mean, it was pretty sad. Like we had to like cancel all that, and like he did all that for nothing now, right? But yeah, that's pretty much happened. We just ran out of money, and we had to part ways because of that.
And then one thing I notice is one of the key changes in this roster, even though it was still South Africa at the time, was Black Poison came over, who'd obviously in the past been in their team a long time before you were there, and then replaced, was it Detroit he replaced at this point in time? That was the player, right? What was this?
Detroit
was move?
He is a co-owner of Bravado, so I think.
Oh, I see, right.
Yeah, when we decided to part from Bravado because we wanted to stay in NA, he decided that he would just move out of the team and continue with working on the project with his brother. So we had to like look for a new team, and eventually ATK came around, and that's another South African org, and they said they could fund it for a while and see how it goes. So yeah, we wanted to continue being South African, so we got Black Poison in. We knew he was good. Some of the players had played with us before, so we wanted to see how that went, and it didn't end up lasting that long, but yeah, I'm happy that we at least tried to like keep the South African dream going.
By the way, just as a random aside, I saw that when you were in this ATK team, there was just an MDL game or whatever where you had to use tens as a stand-in. He was obviously like the Valorant superstar now. Like, was he actually like good back then? This is like pretty. I think this is when maybe he'd maybe even stood in for C9 already at this point in time. Was he actually like a known player at this point in time? Was he good?
I think this was before C9. I think he.
Ah, okay, it could be.
He was starting to get noticed, and we're like, cool, let's get tens in. Let's play with tens, and he was actually like the player that I was trying to like set up the most when he joined. He wasn't playing with us for that long, maybe like a month or something like that, but he was racking up really big numbers, and I was trying to like just base everything around him. I wanted to make it as easy as possible for him to perform, and it was working out pretty well. But at the end of the day, we were just ATK, and then Cloud9 comes knocking, and like he just left instantly, and I think his career never really took off since then, but I was happy to play with him back then. He was just mechanically wise, he was a really, really good player. Just I think he wasn't ready for like the move up to tier 1 CS that Cloud9 was looking for. So I think that if he had like a longer period of time in like tier 3, tier 2 CS, he would have maybe been more ready to join a tier 1 team. I think it was too early for him.
Because then I feel like this is where people in their memory have mixed up the story, because they think that after this, you guys joined Envy. And it's like, no. Sonic joined Envy and sort of went that route. And quite frankly, at the time, JT, this looked like, because he was actually thought to be like one of the best players, he had the best numbers, etc. That was actually thought, unfortunately, to be like, right, he's the good player, so he can go to like an NA team and then fuck the rest of them. Who cares about the rest? Even though obviously the joke is on the Envy team, some of the players actually you end up playing with were there. So what happened in this scenario? Like when he leaves your team, did you actually worry, like, is the project dead? How do we recover from that, right?
I mean, yeah, I didn't admit it then, but when he left, I was very worried. He was by far our best player. He was actually by far our best player. So it was, I didn't think we were going to be able to fill his shoes, and I don't think we did, and not for a very long time at least. Eventually the NB thing didn't work out, and he came back, which I'm happy for. But I think if he's one of those guys that's just like super naturally skilled, and he was just always just good without even trying, right? There's a lot of players like that, and in the end, it didn't really work out for him. But I think if he put in more time and he was more dedicated in the game, he would have been able to be like tier 1. He's back to playing now. Like, I'm sure he can still do it. And yeah,
I mean, the joke is if he'd have grinded, he probably would be in your team with you now, right? Probably in Cole.
I mean, yeah, he probably would be, or maybe that Envious team would have done way better. He was joining them to be a star, and he ended up not being like the star that they wanted. And I think out of any South African player, like even myself, I think he was by far the most skilled, at least like back a few years ago, and he had the most potential by far. I think he just he didn't realize it, or he just didn't know how to he just didn't know how to grind, honestly. And I think he kind of wasted that away. Maybe he can bring it back now that he's playing on the NA teams again with Wildcard right now. But yeah, we'll have to see. I think yeah.
Right, if people look back now, it obviously looks like a slam dunk move to bring in OC and Floppy because people know they're good. They obviously still play pro level CS now, and the players you released just basically went back to being South African players and just kind of drifted off in obscurity. At the time, was it an obvious move to bring this in? I mean, the obvious angle I'd bring is, like I say, when we only moved there, I'm sure everyone did move, like, hey, we're moving as a project, we're going to make it together and put South Africa on the map. It feels a bit whack when you then have to sort of be like, fuck, we need better players, just get these Americans in. Like, what was this move? Was it an obvious move to make? Was it a hard move to make?
I mean, yeah, it was a hard move to make. I think, I mean, it when we made that move, it just completely changed like what the whole project was. Right, it's not a South African project anymore. Now it's an American project. So yeah, it was definitely a hard move to make. I think eventually we just felt like we were just going nowhere, and if we just continued like trying to like put South Africa on the map by having a full team, it just wasn't going to work out. And I think, I mean, I know now, like, it probably was the right move. I wish I could have done it with a South African team or went further with a South African team, especially maybe like the Bravado team, like we were speaking about before. I think that was like our biggest chance to do it, but it didn't work out. And yeah, I think if we didn't make that move then, we probably just keep playing for another few months and then eventually just go back home to South Africa and everyone forgets about us. So yeah, we looked at a few NA players. It was easy to choose OC and Floppy at the time just because we had played against them a lot of times. We had seen how they play. I was playing with them just in pugs and stuff like that, and I just thought like this is probably it. Like we should do this.
By the way, for people who don't know, like in the early team, when this team then became Cloud9 with the similar players, and you've got the lineup that people will then know became the one that played in Flashpoint, etc. Like at the time, like we talked about Sonic already, but the two obvious players that the eye test showed was Sonic and Floppy. Like these are the guys who would have the big pop-up performances, right? Who would you say Floppy was back then? Because I actually think in your complexity teams, it feels like he's had different roles potentially. Who was he in this team? Was he the same sort of player?
No, not the same player. He wasn't like the hard lurker on that team. He was more of like the flex role where he'll be in the spots where like a flex would play, like the spots that was needed. And I think that's like a much higher fragging role, like much higher fragging roles in general. You're more active, you're more involved with the team. So like right now he's kind of just like a lurker, so he's pretty much on his own. We just leave him to his own devices. But back then on that team, it was expected of him to like make plays, be aggressive, finish off rounds. Like it's like that's probably like one of the most important roles. Like especially even now during the CS2, it's also one of the most important roles. I think he was much more involved back then. And like you said, it was pretty much just like Sonic and Floppy. Everyone was looking to like play really well. I think OC was still like OC was still like at the beginning, like his beginning phases of like getting better and like turning into the star for us. It just he just needed more time.
Right. When you made the Cloud9 lineup, one thing I remember, I'm going off memory here, so correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't Motum sort of more of like an entry frag type player? Wasn't he sort of the guy who just like charged in or whatever? Like, who was this guy? He seemed like quite an unusual player, like a different player profile than I've seen a lot of players.
Yeah, he was. I mean, he was exactly that. He was like just basically like a bowling ball. Like he would just be the entry fragger that would just keep going. You would just he would listen to whatever you had to say, but if he sees a kill, he's gonna just keep going. And I think it's pretty much like kind of like an old school way of doing things, the way that he liked to play. And I think he was a great player. I just think he was a little bit erratic, if that makes sense. I think a lot of NA players are like that, where they just kind of when you come to like the matches or the big games, like you have to be smart. And you have to have like a system of the way that you want to play, and not just be like a guy that just like goes for kills when you see them, or like rely on your team to set you up all the time. And I think he was really close to being like a great player for us, but he ended up like not figuring out a system for himself where he was going to be a star player, because he's playing roles, especially on the CT side, where you need to be the star of the team. So like the roles that Elise would play for us right now, or Fang played for us before Elise joined, and he wasn't he wasn't putting up the numbers against the tier 1 teams or tier 2 teams consistently, and we needed someone that would be able to do that if we wanted to like take the next step.
One thing actually that I noticed very early when this team became Cloud9, so if you join a big org, I'm always going to look into like, is this team actually legit, watch some of the games, is even though people might have like different opinions about the levels of the players or how good they are, one thing I actually think was pretty obvious from early on is this team actually obviously clearly had like a real tactical system, and like you and TC obviously had like a lot of inputs of what you were doing. Like, in fact, I remember even back then, there was like some set players you guys had, and some smoke combos and flashes, stuff that other people were just stealing. I remember even like you guys were obviously like coming up with it. Were you guys putting in a lot of time like in the lab, as it were, there? Do you feel as though this team allowed you to flex your sort of tactical muscle?
Yeah, I think, in my opinion, and maybe as I'm just trying to hype myself up, I think our tactical side of the game was probably like our best thing at that time. I think there was like some crazy, I'm not sure if it was Cloud9, but I think it was like that was crazy stat that we had like the most flash assists in the world or something like that. And well, per round, I think we were pretty close to big, or maybe above big, I'm not sure, but somewhere around there. And yeah, like you said, a lot of people were just like stealing our things because, I mean, they were really cool strats, and they were pretty much like the only reason we were winning rounds most of the time. And I think what was holding us back then was like my individual level was pretty bad back then. It might have been my worst year, probably, like at LANs and stuff like that. MOTM just wasn't like a star player like other teams had. He just wasn't ready for it either. OC was still growing up, trying to get like the hang of things, and yeah, we were just like a new team. We were still like an inexperienced team. We were still new players. Like we weren't ready to play like good teams and all that. We still did some good things. Like we came. I think the first Flashpoint we came fourth or something like that.
Yeah.
Like that's not too bad. Like we could have done better. So I think we had some good moments, but we were very inconsistent. We had like you said, like really good tactics, but if we can't finish the kills, we weren't really able to like just win every match.
By the way, did you actually feel, or was there a sense that like we are in Cloud9, like there's like pressure, like you're supposed to do something in this team? I mean, there's even an implication if you're in Cloud9 that you're also supposed to like represent NA, and sort of like NA fans are supposed to be able to. Did you feel any pressure in that sense?
Yeah, we did. At the start, we did feel some pressure on that. Like it was just like we never really had eyes on us before we joined Cloud9, and then we joined Cloud9, and everyone's like super hyped. Let's see what they can do. Or like some people are like super critical of the change and like picking us up because we weren't with tier 1 team, and Cloud9 was obviously expected to be that. I think at least to me, like while we were on the team though, like eventually, like after a few weeks or months, I just felt like Cloud9 wasn't like treating us like a tier 1 team, and they were kind of just treating us like an academy team. Like they weren't sure what they were going to do next. Like, let's see how these guys do. Maybe we'll keep a few of them. That's the kind of like thought I had when I was on the team. Maybe I shouldn't have been having that thought, and maybe it like affected our performance. But also COVID hit, and like we were stuck in NA, and it didn't really go well. It was just like a bunch of bad things that were happening while we were on that Cloud9 team, and it just wasn't. It was hard for us to like grow as an inexperienced team when we were just like stuck in the Cloud9 house, like every single day, just like locked down in COVID, and especially in Los Angeles, it was like
there's nothing to do. Yeah, it was nothing to do.
Yeah, there was a real lockdown in Los Angeles. Like, so it was a struggle for us to actually improve as a team, and use the resources that Cloud9 had, because we pretty much just joined Cloud9 and we had the same resources that we had on
so something I was going to ask
because of COVID, really. I think
I forgot to actually ask about this earlier, but obviously it was technically at the end of ATK that you did that EPL run where you went to EPL and you beat like North and G2, and like you're actually like showing some real results. It was kind of the reason why at the time Cloud9 gambled on sort of the min-max to bring you guys over. I always thought the sad thing for you was you came over, did that, then you had like the IEM, you got to IEM at this point in time, but then the joke is everyone went on the internet, so at that point you only had essentially Flashpoint and online qualifiers and leagues again, and then like if there'd actually been like a normal LAN circuit that year where, you have like a DreamHack Open into like, let's say like a DreamHack Summit into like you see if you can qualify a couple of IEMs, like the LANs is actually where we would have seen if this team was any good. Like the problem is just playing online for like a year or so, and then basically that was the end of the team. The team just got booted. Like what are you supposed to do with that? I know what you mean. Like, the joke is, even though you're in Cloud9, as soon as it becomes online play and you're just on a server, Cloud9's just a piece of text on the screen. Like, you can't make use of the fact that it would be awesome to be going to the events and have like the fucking status and all that. Like, I see what you mean. It's kind of like a missed opportunity, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like if someone had to join not Cloud9, they were partners with everything back then. They're not really right now. But let's say if someone had to join Complexity, like we're partner team to Blast in Pro League, like you're gonna automatically go to those lands, so you know you have something to play for.
Yes.
You're gonna have money for boot camps. You're gonna go to boot camps before the events in Europe and have better practice. And in Cloud9, we kind of just had COVID, so we didn't really get that. Like we were pretty much at the house all the time. I think when we joined, we had 6 weeks in Europe at the start. I think it was like 4 weeks of practice or something like that, and then we played Katowice, which we didn't do well, and then we went back and played Flashpoint, and then I think like after like the first or second game of Flashpoint, it went online and everything was COVID, and
yes.
we pretty much were just stuck in the house. So we ended up just we were earning more salary, but we were just pretty much not able to use any of the Cloud9 resources that they had.
By the way, one thing I always wondered, something I've known a lot of the people like Kassad and people in Renegades who went through this, is I feel like the part people don't give you guys credit for is you're not just another NA team grinding. Like for you particularly, like from South Africa, like you're living in a weird country. Like, yeah, you speak English, but it's not like Americans are identical to South Africans. Like I imagine one of the tricky things with this must be what you do when you're not playing. Like how do you was it easy to make friends? Do you have people outside of the game you can sort of chill out with? Has that part been a challenge?
Yeah, definitely. I don't really have. Or you're saying like, how do I build a support network? I don't have a support network in NA. I pretty much just have the team. So I mean, luckily the team are my friends as well. But sometimes like it would be nice to like have people to like hang out with or speak to or like play with that it's not part of the team, because it's difficult to always have a good environment. Even in a team of friends, like we were working together, we're like all passionate about what we're doing. We're trying to do our best to win and all that. So it's a little hard for me sometimes being away from home, being away from family. And yeah, it's a little different for me as a South African to do that, especially before I got a European passport. I was just like pretty much every 3 months, like going to a new visa appointment and traveling to a new country, being stuck in NA doing this and then going home to South Africa to get this visa and stuff like that. So it was like really hard for me as a player to go through all that. And even still now, like I know, like as soon as I leave an NA team, I have to leave the US and go live somewhere else. I don't have a green card. I'm not gonna like stay there forever. So it's like I'm on an NA team right now. This is my home away from home, but it's not a permanent solution. So it's like I'm pretty much just all the time just working hard and in that headspace.
So one thing I thought was quite cool was when Cloud9 moved on and then obviously made that like Henry G super team and all the rest of it and tried to like make a big splash again, like a lot of people would be forgiven for thinking like, oh, maybe your team will get demoralized or it'll split apart or something. Like what's cool is when you guys basically became Extra Salt, if people don't know, like yes, Sonic like left and they found Fang, but like the rest of the team was the same. It looked like you guys just grinded like motherfuckers again. Like you had a lot of success online. Like you actually established yourself. People probably remember the joke was this was the era when all the NA teams cause of Flashpoint dying, etc. were like leaving, and you guys were sort of like one of the only NA squads left, and actually people were kind of like, you were kind of like the people's champions in a way. I think people were vibing with the team early on. What was the early Extra Salt project like?
Yeah, I'm very thankful for the Extra Salt guys for picking us up and keeping the project alive. Like again, that was like one of those moments that just felt like I might have to like go back home and just go back to studying or something like that. So luckily for TC, actually, he knew these guys and he sold the project to them, and they were pretty. I mean, they liked the project and they bought us out, or at least bought OC out back then. And yeah, from the start it was great. I think they set us up in apartments. We each had like a 3-bed, not each. I mean, we had 3-bedroom apartments, so each of us had our own room. We weren't sharing rooms like we were before. We were in Austin, Texas, and we had like a pretty good environment where we had like a gym and stuff like that. We had an office apartment where we had all the PCs. So it was actually like coming from Cloud9, I felt like we were still on like a pretty good org when we were on Extra Salt. They were doing a really good job, and they were very serious about making sure that we had like everything that we needed. So it was good. I think the team was from the start of Extra Dot was very motivated to play their best and like put as much work in as they could. Especially Fang when he first joined, he was putting a lot of work, and it showed. Like, and eventually when we went to European tournaments, he was playing really well back then. And yeah, I mean, it was good, and I think that was pretty much like the first besides DreamHack Winter and Bravado, like the first time like I felt like I was being like successful in CS, because we were I guess since like a lot of teams left NA, we were probably like a top 3 somewhere around the top 3 NA team back then, and there was a lot of people that was very impressed by us, and that was pretty much like my breakthrough as an IGL. Like people like taking me more seriously. I was again playing better that year individually. So yeah, it was a good year.
The only thing I've noticed is a bit cursed about this period, though, is if you look, like it's not even a joke, at the beginning of the year when the team plays, you do an awesome online. Then in the middle, when all the RMR tournaments are to get to the major, that's like all the bad performances. And then right after the RMR, you just awesome again online. Like, did something happen to this team in the RMR tournament? Like, on paper, this team probably should have been one of the America's teams going, right?
Honestly, I don't remember. I would tell you, but I honestly don't remember what happened. I think it was part of the year where there was like maybe only one major or something. I actually don't remember. I can't answer this question. But yeah, we were consistent most of the time, but we did have like our bad periods of like of a month or two where it was like important for us to play well and we didn't. So I don't really remember.
What about this then? So in the same way as you've been in Cloud9, right? Complexity also is a pretty famous org. Like, people know this org. And this time, actually, this is obviously, it's not the old days. This is an era when also they have money to spend and they can invest and actually do stuff. Like, was it a big deal to join this team?
Yeah, definitely. I think Complexity is the best org I've been on. And they put in a lot of money, and even for our team, like they put in a lot of money into us. They're setting us up well. We have our HQ. We have all the partner slots. Like, we're going to every event now. Like, even back when we were losing, we're pretty much going to every event. We're going to Katowice, Pro League, Blast, not Blast finals and stuff, because we have to actually qualify for that. So like, even when we were playing bad, we had all these opportunities to play well. So like, now it's just up to us to actually like show what we're capable of. Obviously, the beginning of Complexity, it was not good. Like, we were doing pretty bad. You can actually probably compare it to like the way EG was performing. Besides that, we qualified, like we did qualify for the Antwerp major, which was big. I mean, these days, just qualifying for a major is like a big thing for orgs. Just like
I mean, for you, let's be real. For you individually, though, after all these years of grinding, you haven't even had that many lands because of the online bullshit. It must be a big deal to get. I've actually qualified to a major. Like, no matter what happens, that's like the top of the career so far, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you actually look back at it, I think I've only, like, when I joined Complexity, I probably had like 5. I think even 5 might be too many tier 1 lands. So it was like pretty much all new to me. Fang, I wasn't playing in tier 1 lands. He was playing during the online era. I mean, for most of us, it was pretty much just like all new to us, going to tier 1 lands and all that. And we were expected to perform from the start. I mean, we also expected ourselves to perform from the start because we were doing pretty well with OC and Extra Salt. Even to the end of Extra Salt, we were playing online tier 2, tier 3 EU cups and EU tournaments, and we were winning them. So we expected like to go and like when we joined Complexity, like we signed Junior, we signed Junior and Grim. We do a few weeks of practice, and we're back to like what we had. Obviously, it didn't work out that way. I think tier 1 teams are like a lot better than you expect them to be, like once you actually start playing them consistently and they start actually like putting more respect like to watch your games and stuff like that. So we had a lot to improve on, and I wish we had done it faster, but at least now we're like a good place right now.
Right, obviously, as you say, one of the differences when you come to Col is this is around the time actually when OC obviously ended up on Team Liquid. So you had Junior came in, who was the player people remember briefly was obviously on Furia when they were trying to replace Henny for that weird period of time. Right, when you made that swap, right, obviously that was when OC was starting to peak. I'd see why Team Liquid picked him up. I have a question for you. You are obviously biased, but spoiler, I actually want to ask you before I go back because you know the guy, right? even though this is a bit of a little question, you tell me if it's too harsh, right? Even though people probably know I'm a critic, right? As in, I think Team Liquid should have like a top 5 AWP in the world, in my opinion. In my opinion, the lineup they have now is what Team Liquid should always have. They should always be going for number 1, and they should always be gunning for the top. So if you sign anyone who's not that level, I'm always going to be critical. But I will say, the thing I feel for OC on that team is I don't actually get the sense, mate. I don't believe they ever actually sat him down and were like, right, you're our tier 1 primary AWP, we're going to play around you, and then let's see how you do. I always felt like my analogy would be if you saw how they used Safe in Furia, where it was like, yeah, you have the AWP, but just do something back there and we're just going to run the team the same way, basically, but you just have the AWP back there. Like, again, he also looked at, they never tried to play around him. Like, so I don't know how to critique these players, because at the end of the day, it's like they weren't given the shot. I don't feel like they actually got the setup you need. So do you think so as well? Like, when I saw how you used Orsi, it feels like in Liquid he was an afterthought. Did you get the similar vibe?
Yeah, definitely. I think, I mean, if you look at it like from what we had before, see, they didn't really have, like, especially when they were playing well in like 2019 and stuff like that, they weren't really like playing around the AWP. So I felt like they didn't have a system that was like for AWPers at all. Like the same as like you could say for Furia, they didn't have a system that was for AWPers, it was mostly for riflers. But I think you can't put all the blame on Liquid for this. I think like OC as well needs to go into the team and tell them like, these are the things I like to do. This is why I was playing good on Extra Salt. Like, he needs to actually like take the space from like the elite players that Liquid had. Like if you're a player on Liquid and OC joins and he's never been on a tier 1 team and he doesn't come in and have all the ideas and stuff and it doesn't work out from the start, you're probably just gonna focus on yourself and like ask OC to support you rather than the other way around. Obviously, I'm not on the team, so I don't know like exactly what happened. But yeah, I think that's partly it. Like I think on Extra Salt, he was the star, and he knew that he was the star, so he made sure, like we all made sure that he played well. He made sure that he performed, because he knew that if he didn't perform, we weren't going to win any games, and it wasn't like that on Liquid. So that's part of it, and yeah, I think maybe as well, like it was also like his first time playing tier 1 LAN, so I don't know if that got to him at all. The travel schedule, like he was grinding big time when we were on Extra Salt and Cloud9, and maybe the travel schedule didn't allow him to like do the things that he needed to do that he did before. But I'm not sure. Like he still to this day, I think like when he was playing for us on Extra Salt, he was like one of the most skilled players that we had at the time. He was very impactful. Everything that he did was just like the correct move. But yeah, I don't know, maybe he just wasn't ready for tier 1 at the time, or he didn't have the space on Liquid. But yeah, I wouldn't put all the blame on Liquid. Like it's gonna come from OC as well.
No, I know what you mean there. I agree. You have to sort of also demand the resources. Then, by the way, if they don't give you, then you can blame them. If they don't give you a chance, but I agree. If you just sort of the joke is, if you do it like school and you keep your head down, then yeah, the teacher won't call on you, but you also won't get all the fucking chances. Someone else will take that spot, especially if they're a veteran. Along these lines, though, the funny thing is, the reason I also set that question up this way is because I feel like in your team, you got the other version of that. So the other player I also think was in Liquid, who never got properly set up and didn't look as good, was fucking Grim. Like, Nate, I saw this guy on Triumph, then I saw him on Team Liquid. It's like, is this even the same player? But then I looked at the spots he's playing, and I was like, of course it isn't. He's not even given the chance. When he came back to your team, he immediately, his numbers went right back up again. He looked really good. Like, how did you try to use this player?
I don't know. I feel like when Grim came from Liquid, he was basically just like a beat up horse. I think like the toxic environment in Liquid at that time was just not good. They just came from winning everything to like now losing everything. They weren't doing well at all with Fallen. Stewie was having issues with the team. Grim just comes in and he's like a new guy. He's also a very quiet guy. So it's like he's new. He's never played like at this level. He's expecting the team to be like all structured and like ready to play and all that. And then he comes in and it's just like a toxic environment. That's what it seemed like to me from the outside. Like obviously I don't know.
Sure.
I don't know more than that. But Grim joins us and I just see like this guy's like insanely skilled mechanically, and like if we just put him in the right spots, like give him some time to like ease back into it, be more confident again, like he'll be able to play well. And he did actually play well for, I mean he's still playing like decently now, but he was like actually a star for us at the start, and it showed really well like that he isn't like, I mean his stats on Liquid were just like really bad, and he joins us and it's just instantly good. So I think I think it's again like maybe Liquid back then weren't giving like enough resources to the new players they were picking up, or maybe they just didn't believe in the players they were picking up. It's hard to tell, but I think like when he joined Liquid, it really wasn't a good time to join Liquid. I think it could have been anyone that joined, and it probably would have ended up the same if the environment is that way. Like I'm sure everyone's seen like the videos and the voice clips of them fighting and all that, and like how the games went and stuff like that. I just think, yeah, it just wasn't a good time.
Yes. Oh, the other thing I was going to ask was, obviously then, like, the junior move wasn't for too long. Then you finally got Holzerk came in, right? It does seem like, obviously, that's more the complexity core that people now know is obviously still to this day playing, right? When this guy came in, the funny thing is he was also the victim of the online era, because when he joined that dig team with, like, the former NIP players, like, that was supposed to be the year where he would have proved online he was really good, because he never had any bloody lands. Like, he was just on the internet, and then obviously that team did nothing. So this is another player that feels that you get a chance to, like, reclaim. Like, by the way, these are all, like, really shrewd signings, I have to say, by Cole. Like, these are signings where the analogy would be like the stock market, like the stock's low, but you buy it, and you know the player, he can go back up again, he's got potential. Like, I'm pretty sure almost as soon as he got into this team, people saw like he could be an impact player, right?
Yeah, I think when he joined, he had only played like 1 or 2 lands, like just like a minor or something, an RMR or something like that. So he was pretty much again like someone that was new to Tier 1 CS and playing like these studio events and Katowices and stuff like that. So I think like he joined like with something to prove, and I think he's been inconsistent on the team, but I think he's still one of the best AWPers in my opinion. I think he does, when he plays well, like he takes over the game and he's a super confident player. I mean, obviously we came from like the junior era on our team. Junior was not playing well for us, so like it wasn't hard for Holzerk to like outperform him and like bring something new for us. But yeah, I mean, Cole again just brought in a player that was like kind of new to lands, and we had to see how it would work out. I'm happy that he enjoys my system, and we've had like obviously good moments, bad moments, but he's a good player.
One thing that's brutal is you said yourself earlier that obviously you haven't actually played that many like stage playoff scenarios at lands. And one of the reasons that's brutal about that is if people remember in this lineup in complexity, it's like if I look at the Liquipedia, it's going to look shit. It's going to be like 9th tier, 11th, 13th. But here's what's mad. If I go and watch the games, mate, I can remember watching these games. Cole might have been one of the most insane teams of all time at losing like overtime, 16-14, like you lose like, you know, by 2 rounds on your map or whatever odds. You get to the 3rd map and then you lose 16-14. Like, man, the amount of times this team was like that far away from doing it. It felt, I mean, the obvious angle, even though you were underdogs, was people wondered, did the team have problems closing? Was there some sort of a problem if it got at the end of the game and it was a tense scenario? What would you say?
I mean, yeah, we obviously had problems closing. Like, we had so many close games that we should have won, and we should have made playoffs. Like,
was it like a thing
times.
Inside the team that people saw this pattern and kind of recognized it?
Yeah, definitely. We thought about it, but I think it's easy to say like we have problems closing, but I think what we really had was like problems winning rounds that we should be winning. We're making like these fundamental mistakes that a better team wouldn't make, but we still had like we had the structure of a really good team and we had the tactics of a really good team, but we didn't have the experience or the skill floor that a good team would have. Like even if you watched our games now, we're still struggling with that. You even see like Elise like losing his mind because of the rounds that we lose, and he's just not used to it. So it's just like I don't think people understand like how hard it is to get to like that level. Like we need to actually lose like a lot of games before we realize like what we're doing wrong and like the things that we should be doing. Because I think tactics are so easy. Like I can go watch a few demos and I'll have the strat book of like a tier 1 team. Like it's so easy to make the tactics and it's so easy to perform them if you just like structure it properly. But to actually go down and win the 3v3s, the 2v2s, make sure we don't lose like a lot of guns on our eco rounds, make sure we win the 5v2s that we should be winning. That's the hard part, and that's the thing that wins matches, and that's always the thing that we've been struggling with. Even to this day, we're still struggling with that.
Yes.
So when you look at like the consistent teams like Vitality and FaZe and like the top 5 teams that are ahead of us right now, they all have players that like don't mess up the small things. They don't have like the bigger strat books. They don't have a better strat book than us. They just have like these players that aren't making as many mistakes as we are. So yeah, that's the thing that we're like focusing on the most right now, and that's the
Sure.
thing that we lacked back then the most, especially.
Yeah, I think that's actually one thing people probably are unfair about who are casual fans is they just think if you look at the placings, that's just how skilled the players are. Like, oh, you just don't have as good players. But I know what you mean. Like, basically, the real thing is, as you say, if you go look at any top team, it's not like it's just like they have the best fragger. It's like they have people who are like insane veterans. Like, the joke is even people like Raid on FaZe, you could just rely on them to win like a 1v2 against the best players in the world at like a big line. He's not going to get nervous. He's just going to make like a crazy like veteran genius player and then win the round for you. Like, the point of there is like that there's no no one's calling that. No one's like, Raid, win the 1v2. There's no coaching there. Like, if you're in the 1v2, like, these scenarios just happen differently every game. Like, I imagine that must be the hardest part, right? Is that's the one thing you can't make up the gap of is experience. Like, you either have the experienced players or you don't. You're trying to gain some at these tournaments, but you can't catch up 5 years on some top pro, right?
Yeah, especially if we don't have any experienced player on the team. I
Yes.
think before we least join, like, we go watch the demo and we're like, okay, well, we shouldn't have lost that round, but we're not actually speaking about the right things. So we don't actually understand the fundamental that we should have had, right? So when Elise joins, like, the review sessions we have are way longer. Like, he's telling us the things that we haven't even thought about, like things that we should have fixed like a long time ago, things that we should have had names for, just like keywords that we should be using, like different ways to play clutch situations that we didn't even think about. And like that's where like our skill, each player's skill level is like increased by so much. And yeah, that's the big thing. But like I said, we're still messing those things up. Like if you look at our recent events and we play like FaZe, like you said, you mentioned Rain and like their kind of players, like they're so good in the clutch situations because they're just like an elite player that's played it. Like they've played more stage games than I've played, like
of course,
in the last like 3 years on LAN, just group stages even. So it's just they're at a different level at times. Obviously, like we're pretty close now. Like sometimes we are like above them even. So it's interesting to see. But like yeah, we go play them now and we get like we get 2v5 like 3 times in one game on Ancient. The last time we played them at full final, and just like we're just this close, but we're still messing up these small things that were just like, I think in my opinion, like put us to like a top 3 position at least.
Events come and go, fame rises and then falls away. You have a job, you lose a job. You do one thing, you have to move on to another. But one of the cool things about my career is I have my own support network who's always got my back. So I always know I can rely on support to do the work I want to do and talk the way I want to talk and not have to follow certain rules that others arbitrarily have to follow. And that support group is, of course, called the Skrilluminati, my Patreon community. This video and all the others on my channel was kindly supported by Matt Pugnatio Rajcula, Frisky, Ahmed Hadjou, Tobias Bernasconi, Tooorin, Tosh, Jensen Goh, Animosity, and you know it, always my main man Jerky's minion, rocking with me, ride or die. Would you like to suggest a topic or a guest for a future episode of Reflections or a talk show? Do you want teasers? Find out who the upcoming guests are. Maybe you want to ask me a question for my video AMA where I tend to go quite in depth, or perhaps you want to take part in one of those really long donated discussions where we talk about whatever you're into in esports. Well, if any of those perks or any of the others catch your fancy, join the Skrilluminati today via the Patreon link in the description box where? Down below.